your speech, but if we ask you about ducks, we don't want you to carry on for a minute and a half about the benefits of flossing, all right? So just kind of stick to the topics we ask, please. And if there's something that you don't get to cover because we didn't ask about it and it's important to you, please tackle that in your closing statement. Save that for then. Feel free to take notes, right? If you go over your time on a response, it may result in less time on the next question. And the next one might be the one you really want to talk about even more, so please try to stay on time. All right. And hopefully we can get this bad boy to work. If not, we'll stick with the color card. So please, I know you're looking at the audience. I say every one of you when you're giving your opening statements. Everyone else was looking at us in the time card and the clock cards. The person talking was looking at the audience. So try to remember to kind of look over at us, at least out of the corner of your eyes, so you can see us waving these if that's in the timer if we get that to work. All right.
The time of the questions will be broken down into either 1 minute or 2 minutes, so you'll be informed at the time of the question. So now,
when we're in the closing statement, will be 60 seconds per candidate. If we seem like we're sailing right along, we'll see if we can extend that too. And at the end, time and God willing, we'll see if we can take some questions from the audience too. And we got a podium with a mic over there for that.
okay. So this first question is going to be a 2-minute question. The newly formed CD8 has been identified as a heavily populated Hispanic district. Recognizing the importance of garnering the Hispanic vote in this election, without which you cannot win, please outline your plan to message effectively to Hispanic voters in this new district in order to earn their votes. And we'll begin with Jules. Give me a second.
Testing.
Yeah, yes, that's a good idea.
That's my production background in me. Okay, so first of all, messaging. It's going to start right on our website. It's going to start on our mailers, our flyers, all of our literature materials. We have to be able to reach our voters. And when I was asked about this at the last one, we had some different answers from different candidates, but I just want to make sure that people know that I understand that Hispanic community is just like all the rest of us. They care about their families, they're small business owners, just like me, they're hardworking, blue collar, they care about their communities, they love their families, and they're very proud of their heritage. As a wedding photographer, I've had the privilege to be able to spend some intimate moments with my Hispanic families on the happiest days of their lives with their families, and so I've gotten to see that firsthand. But we can connect with them through their children, through our children, because they're sick and tired of seeing what's going on in our schools also. Critical race theory, sexual grooming, it's absolutely disgusting. As a small business owner, I also plan on connecting with them through that. We can see how overregulated and overtaxed we're being. Mandates, mask mandates, there's whispers of those coming back. It's just unacceptable, and we have to be able to band together and fight back against our government and all of this unconstitutional crap that's going on. Some of the proudest Americans I've ever met are immigrants who came here the legal route. And so immigration, especially illegal immigration, is a huge topic. In fact, at caucus, I got to chat with one of my neighbors who has family and grew up in one of the border towns. And she was telling me stories about absolutely how horrific it is. Kidnappings of women and children on a daily basis. The cartels are running them. Drugs are pouring in. And so we have to make a path that's easier for them to become citizens.
Thank you, Jules. All right, next question is 1 minute.
We're still on the same question.
We are, oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Lori. Do you need the question repeated?
Oh, okay, we're just going on. Okay. No, I think I heard it.
Okay.
Okay, very good. So, I don't know if you saw lately.
Or you might move the microphone a little closer.
The mic on, make sure your mics are on.
Testing?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
But you gotta be fairly close to it, I think, too, for it to pick up.
Okay. Well, the socialist Marxists in our country are freaking out right now. I don't know if you noticed, but some of our news outlets essentially called Hispanics racist for gravitating towards those same principles of liberty that I talked about earlier. And those are founding principles of our country. You know, hard work, opportunity, equal treatment under the law, personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility. They respond to those principles that transcend party. They will respond to somebody who has upheld those principles for 8 years in the State House. And you need to remember that this job will be very much like the other in the State House that I held for 8 years. And that is, your representative actually just has one job, and that is to vote for you. They can run all the bills they want, and some of them sound great, but then some of those same people will take away your vote, your rights with their votes the rest of the time. And people will be watching in this race, especially some of the small business owners, because government's growing ever bigger and bigger. And, well, I will highlight later some of the bills that I've run that is really going to appeal not only to that segment of the population, but to our independent moms as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, just to clarify, the first beep you hear is the 30-second mark. Then the second one with the red and the continuous beep is when the time's up. So, like that. Time's up. Go.
Okay, go ahead, Tyler.
It's like being at a track meet in high school. So, you know, you talk about how are we going to connect. We have a 40-year high inflation. I mentioned that earlier, right? And it's affecting all of us, every single one of us, regardless of who you are. And it's because of the radical policies of the left that are driving us down this road, and it's hurting. And that's not necessary. When it comes to connecting to voters, it's about connecting to what matters most. We shouldn't be deciding between whether or not we fill up the car or we buy groceries for our family. Right? I go back to the energy industry because I'm so passionate about that. I'm passionate about it because it was my family's ticket to the American dream. It's what brought my family to this country in 1993. It's why I raised my hand 4 months after becoming a citizen and said, send me. And I became a Green Beret and went and fought for our country and fought for others that were being oppressed all across the world. You want to talk about messaging? The messaging is that we need to listen to those that are around us. We need to listen to everybody within our party. We need to listen to all. But we also need to understand that there are some things that just don't work, like the liberal left policies that are driving this country down the drain. That is unacceptable, and we need to fight against that. We need to spread the word that there is an alternative, that you don't have to depend on Russian gas or oil and gas from the Middle East, that we can in fact be a net exporter of energy, that we can in fact give people the opportunity to rise up through and reach that American dream like my family did. It's possible, but not with the policies the left are passing. And that's the message I send, is that we need to roll back the policies. We need to do what's right for the people and for our family. Thank you.
No, you got 30 seconds.
Oh, well, there we go.
Unless you're done, we'll let you stop.
I appreciate everybody being here tonight, by the way. I'll take my time to say that. Thank you. I see some familiar faces and those of you that have come here a few times now and made all the forums, and I do appreciate that. And I'll leave it at that and give you that 30 seconds.
Thank you.
All right, due to this device does not allow us to reset itself, so try to use all your time if possible. All right.
You're trying to tell politicians to talk? If you know a good joke, feel free to share it with us in the audience.
Would you mind repeating the question just so everyone can hear it again?
Sure. I'll read it while he's working that. The newly formed CD8 has been identified as a heavily populated Hispanic district, recognizing the importance of garnering the Hispanic vote in this election, without which you cannot win. Please outline your plan to message effectively to the Hispanic voters in this new district in order to earn their votes.
Thank you. So I wanted the question to be repeated because we as politicians are really good at not answering questions, right? So I want to make sure we actually pay attention to the rules of the forum. At the first forum, we had a similar question. And as a woman, I hate being put in a box, and I hate being told that I'm just one kind of vote. And I know our Hispanic community hates being put in a box, and they hate being called they. And so as a mayor, I've had the opportunity of working with our Hispanic businesses for several years. And I've worked very closely with them, especially through COVID. Some of our small businesses in our community are our Hispanic businesses and our entrepreneurs, and they were hit the hardest by COVID. And so I worked with them very closely to make sure that they had the access to the resources that we had for all of our small businesses. So we created a small business assistance center, and we created a subset of it called Alianza, focused specifically on Hispanic speaking residents, because we didn't have the way to give them the resources they needed to fill out paperwork for PPP loans or to do their taxes during COVID, because I didn't understand the changing expectations over those couple of years. And so I was honored to work with them before COVID, and I was honored to help them through COVID, because together we realized how important it was to be a one community, because we all have the same values. We all have faith, community, and family as the core behind everything we do. So all of us are part of this community, and all of us should be included regardless of the color of our skin or our gender. Thank you.
I think we should have clarified a little bit on that question, and that is that the fact is that traditionally Hispanics have voted with Democrats, and so it is incumbent upon us as a party to attract those voters who really should be voting in our party because their values best align with our party. So that's the purpose. It's not about identity politics or putting anyone in a box or segregating anyone. We want all Americans to be cognizant of what they're voting for. So thank you for your interest. We're going to go to the second question now. This will be a 1-minute answer.
Someone would like to add, a couple of weeks ago I saw an article that they did a poll and asked people if America was invaded like the Ukraine, what would you do? Would you stay and fight or would you leave? And those are the only two options they gave. And some people decided not to answer it and no. But the Democrats, about 30-some% said they would stay and fight. 52% said they would leave. When it was Republicans, 68% said they would stay and fight. It was like teens or 20s said they would leave. 71% of Hispanic voters said they would stay and fight. So they're an incredibly patriotic group, and they love America enough to stay and fight for us. So they're definitely a demographic that is important to reach. They align far more in that category than a lot of others, like you said, with Republicans than they do with Democrats. And it's incumbent on us to help them realize that, make that move and stuff. So as Ronald Reagan said, the party, when he was a Democrat, he didn't leave the Democrats left him. And I think that's maybe a lot of the way things are working with the Hispanic community too. All right, second question, as Hugo said, 1 minute. There are several key issues that affect Americans across the board. What do you see as the top 3 issues to be addressed by the Congress in which you hope to serve? And I'll repeat this too. Several key issues, name the top 3 issues that you think Congress should address while you're there. And we'll start with Lori on this one. Lori, okay?
Okay, very good. So, issues in Congress. Well, one of the things that is going on right now is the inflation rate is absolutely astronomical. It's 7.9%. And that is really hurting anybody who's a saver. That's hurting our poor middle class, and it's certainly hurting our fixed income seniors. And so with money is a commodity just like anything else, except it's the only commodity used and exchanged for every other commodity we buy. So that means essentially if you have more money supply than you have goods and services, then that's called inflation. And so right now we've got these endless government handouts, and we're paying people to stay home rather than producing goods and services. So back in the day, I would say about 78% of Americans agree that work should be tied to benefits. And that's how we got out of a budget deficit for the first time in our lives when Republicans are in control of Congress. So we need to take a look at that again and have a new contract with America.
Time's up.
Thank you. Tyler.
First thing would be energy. And it's not just the oil and gas industry. We need to take a look at the nuclear energy and how that's been basically regulated out of existence. Because I think that there are new technologies out there that we should be taking a look at that aren't necessarily the traditional green technologies that we're looking at, such as solar and wind, and so forth. So driving down energy prices is going to be crucial to helping to curb that inflation that we have currently going on in our country and curb the economy to push it into the right direction. Additionally, we need to build a border. And the border has to do with crime in this country. It has to do with humans being smuggled across the border. It has to do with everything you could possibly imagine. We need to secure that border. It's a sovereign border, and we must do that. It's not just building the wall, there's more things that we can do as well. Additionally, we need to have a strong military, as I mentioned earlier, and cybersecurity is absolutely quintessential to that because of the threats that are coming to our country as technology grows. We need to stay ahead of that. We need to make sure that we are funding our military, we're funding our defense in such a way that we can keep ahead of our enemies, not trying to catch up.
Thank you.
You got a clock in your head, Tyler? Jan, go.
So the issues that we're all facing today are the kitchen table issues. As the mayor, this is something I deal with every single day, and it's part of why I'm running, because I can't solve them anymore as the mayor. The price of everything is too high. I read an article this morning actually that said $5,200 more a year per person in order to keep up with inflation. It's also about safety. I had the honor as the mayor to be able to increase funding for our police department. We hired 52 additional new officers, and every quarter I get to swear in new officers as the mayor. And it's amazing, because I love supporting our men and women in blue. And it's also about energy. We have an opportunity not only to be independent, but to be dominant in energy. I have 23 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, and it's not just about drilling in America, it's also about doing it the right way. We have an opportunity to help Europe get off of Russia and Chinese oil. This is as Americans, we have the ability to do this, and we can be the leaders again in this country. So kitchen table issues are our issues this year, and it's our opportunity.
Thank you.
Is it my turn now?
Yes.
You forgot about me?
You can tell I'm new to this, right?
That's okay.
Thanks, Jules.
Certainly. So in Congress, the main issue I see is budget. We haven't had a balanced budget since 2001, when Clinton was president and the Republicans owned the House and the Senate. Everything starts with that. All of these continued resolutions they keep pushing through decade after decade is doing nothing to help the American people. Overspending and overreach is causing this inflation, not just energy independence, or not being energy independent rather. But they're all connected. And so I would love to see an audit of our own government. Every program, every department, top to bottom, we need to make them more efficient, more affordable, and I would love to see us shrink the government, in fact. So with that, another one is definitely the safety and security of our country.
Thank you.
We're on a roll, but thank you.
All right. Third question. This will be a 2-minute answer. Conservative voters are tired of seeing the same type of political candidates. This field represents a wide variety of candidates. Distinguish yourself to the voters here tonight, as well as those UAs and Democrats who may watch this video afterwards. And we'll begin with Tyler.
To clarify, you want to know what distinguishes ourselves from one another. Correct.
I'm sorry?
As opposed to the same type of political candidates we've had in the past, let's say.
We've been seeing something happen here recently over the last few years in the election cycles. And particularly this year, we're seeing quite a bit of it. I'm not the only Green Beret running for Congress. I'm not the only member of the U.S. Special Forces. There's actually 6 of us running for Congress right now. And I think that that's happening for a very distinct reason, because only one currently sits in Congress. Veterans, after 20 years of war, have decided that they've seen their country being taken away from them. After the botched withdrawal in Afghanistan, suddenly we say, no more. You asked earlier about, or you made the comment about the statistics of the types of people that would be willing to go to war if we were invaded. Well, send me, right? Because there are so many veterans in this country that are proud of where we are, but we are not proud of where we're headed, and we must change that. And that's why we're seeing an influx of veterans coming in, is because we will not stand by any longer and watch it happen, and watch the country that we fought for. Watch the freedom that we fought for other people, and the freedom that we have here in this country be taken away from us, and be taken away from those that we also fought for. Speaking of Afghanistan in particular, there are little girls and women now being beaten overseas because of the withdrawal of Afghanistan. It's unacceptable how that went down. We fought for that, and then we let it go because of inept leadership in Joe Biden. This is why we're seeing veterans starting to run for office. This is why we want to come and serve the people and continue to give back to our country, because there's more that we can do, and we will not stand idly by.
We have a minute left, or half a minute.
I ended it fairly well. Well, thank everybody for coming out.
We can just refer to you as the Minuteman from now on.
Well, it's about getting to the point, right? And the thing is, it is important what I was talking about, that there is a reason why we're seeing an influx, right? We're seeing more and more veterans come. And I look forward to speaking to each and every one of you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Tyler.
right. Jan, do you need the question repeated?
I do not.
Okay. Give me 1 second, and you can get started. Go.
So I said it in my opening speech, if we keep electing the traditional politicians, the career politicians, then we'll end up getting more of the same. I'm a full-time working mom. I have 23 years in the oil and gas industry. I actually spend my days as a director of well construction. I'm in charge of drilling, completions, and facilities engineering and construction. And I manage the entire capital budget for my company. So I have experience that I think is different than what most people that run for office have. I actually have my engineering degree from Louisiana, and I have an MBA from Colorado State University. And I'm extremely proud to be able to use those degrees every single day. But what I got really proud doing is using those in my mayor's job. So I'm the mayor for the city of Thornton. I actually live just down the street. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. I get the opportunity to work with members of my council, and we don't always agree. But we get the chance to do things good for our city. And I'm very proud to be able to work in a city that's not easy to work in. But most importantly, I'm a mom. I have 2 teenagers. And I tell everyone this is the best training for going to Congress that you can ever get. I have a 16-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and we definitely do not see eye to eye. So being able to pull on experiences in my day job, as my job as a mayor that gives me policy background, but also as a mom who lives here and cares about what's happening with my neighbors, makes me the best candidate to go to the general race and beat the Democrats right here in a Democrat county. I'll be joining Tyler in the lobby later if you want to shake hands and talk.
Now's the time for a joke.
Oh, we don't want me telling jokes. I have engineer jokes and they're not very funny. So.
All right. Jules, do you need the question repeated?
No.
Okay. 1 second.
Well, he's getting that work.
So,
I also mentioned it in my opening speech that I'm not a politician, I'm a business owner, and I have extensive management experience. Before I ran my business, I was in the music industry, which is a heavily male-dominated industry. So I have thick skin, not a lot offends me. And before that, I like to say that I've been in management my entire life because I'm also the eldest of 6 kids. I have 5 younger brothers, so I grew up managing them. But more importantly, I'm a single mom. I have 2 kids, and they're my reason for everything. But being a single mom, I don't have anyone to fall back on. So if something happens to my business, or my industry gets shut down because of unconstitutional mandates like it did in 2020, I have learned to be incredibly resilient. I'm the only one that pays my bills, so I don't really have a choice. I have to rise above and make it happen. So that's what I did in my business. I photographed things that I didn't normally do. I took extra hair and makeup gigs just to make ends meet. In fact, in 2020, in the 4th quarter alone, my business was down $40,000. And I only make a little less than $200 every year. That's what I bring in. Of course, I have expenses and things like that. I don't make $200,000, but I have a lot of write-offs. But I'm the most relatable because I'm a parent, because I'm a small business owner, because I'm not a politician. I understand budgets, I understand business, and with that, I also understand management. So, also when it comes to marketing, I know marketing. So, I may have purple hair, I may not look like a typical conservative, but I'm using that to my advantage. Because when you look at everyone who's running for office, who's the one that's gonna stand out? And I've already seen it happening, because I get their attention and then they hear what I have to say.
It's important you're not politicians yet.
I have a lot to say.
All right, go ahead.
Maurice? Yes. Okay, she's looking at it. Say it, say it. You're up.
Say
What
my
do you need
name.
to go?
Okay, so hold on.
I'm sorry, Lord.
Sorry.
We'll get back to this by the 8th, 9th question.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so well, I'm a homeschool mom and I come from the private sector and I bring that experience with me. And I stood up for our values and our freedoms and did not waver all 8 years as in the House. I have noticed a trend when people get in the House, they're rah, 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 they have a plan until they get hit in the face. I think Tyson said that. And then they go along to get along. I have never wavered even once. I even tackled the muzzling of pastors in our state house that weren't allowed to pray in Jesus' name. And I fixed that to make sure that we had the First Amendment rights for everyone in the state house, including our clergymen. I changed that and I fought for freedoms as a chair of the Legislative Audit Committee. I also engineered the impossible by reducing bureaucracy and reducing the size of government, even while in the triple minority. And in fact, I even pushed through an audit the last year I was there to make the COGCC back up, to reduce the bureaucracy, to make sure that oil and gas was not being punished for reporting 0 of 0 of 0, which makes the state 0. So I have done and tackled these things, even put a whistleblower law into effect for folks working in state departments, so they can report any fraud or mishandling of funds or misuse of government resources. So I've done all these things, these practical things, as well as winning awards from Colorado Concern and from the Colorado Contractors Association. Some of these bills that we've been trying to get passed for 20, some of them 50, 40, 20, 10 years. So that's what happens when you stand on principle and make everybody move around you.
Thank you to all the candidates. I'm waiting for the red one to go off here still. All right, thank you. You guys did a great job staying on topic, staying on time. Thank you very much. Moving right along to the 4th question, and this will be a 1-minute question. So, Minute Man, you ready? You're on.
I think it's Jan's turn.
So, explain in your own words how you view the political landscape in this newly formed Congressional District 8. Be specific about what you have learned in your campaigning. So, you want me to repeat it, anybody?
I'll give you a few more.
I was gonna say, you might have to start the time over since you started it while you were talking.
Go ahead.
So this is a really interesting district. In 2016, it won for Trump by about a point. In 2020, it won for Biden by about a point. So this is a real swing district. And as Republicans, we have an opportunity here to show the world and the country what we can do to bring people together. I was knocking on doors last summer. I was not running for election. I was helping other candidates to get elected. And I heard a lot of things at the door that people were tired of. It was inflation, it was safety, it was energy. And we hadn't even seen the gas prices last summer that we're seeing today. And this district cares about all of those things. When you look at Adams County, it's very blue. When you look at Weld and Larimer County, it's very red. But that doesn't mean that's what the vote's going to be.
We got a few more seconds.
Thank you. It means that we have an opportunity to bring all of the unaffiliates that are tired of everything happening in our state and our country to the center right. And working with people in Adams County, working as the mayor for the city of Thornton is something I have done every day, is working with everybody, whether they believe the same thing that I do or not, being able to convince them over to my side of things is the most important part. Thank you.
Just so folks know, we started it and we didn't let her know, so we had to give her some more time at the end. So if we have a mistake, we'll try to make up for it by giving you guys some time after it goes, and you'll kind of know when that happens. right, so we ready? Okay, so Jules now.
So I've been working on this campaign for the last 8 months, as I mentioned before, and I've learned a lot. My goodness, it might be one of the most diverse districts in the state when it comes to demographics. And by that I mean there's industry in Commerce City, there's oil and gas and agriculture in Weld, there's lots of little communities like in Adams County and suburbs and families and all kinds of things. So it's wonderful to see all these different industries, small businesses, of course. And we know that Weld is red and Adams is mostly blue, but we cannot win without the unaffiliated vote, which is almost 45% in the state. That's why I think I'm the best candidate for this, because we can't win without their vote. And that's so distracting.
Sorry.
And, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, the unaffiliated. So we need people that are gonna reach them, and, sorry, lost my train of thought, guys.
No, that's fine. Yeah,
Just so you know, if you're in the middle of a thought, it's okay to finish, just, we'll tell you if you're too long.
just remember, the first beep you hear just means 30 seconds left. It doesn't mean stop. You can just plow right on through that first one, okay? All right. So, Lori?
Repeat the question.
Yeah. Explain in your own words how you view the political landscape in this newly formed Congressional District 8. Be specific about what you have learned in your campaigning.
What I've learned in my campaigning is that Republicans are very angry at the Republican Party. And a lot of independents left the Republican Party for the same reason. And the number one reason they say is because the party no longer represents me. They have left me. And I know a lot of Democrats feel exactly the same way, and that's why they've defected to the independents. And again, it's back to those principles that founded America. That's what I'm finding out, is that they don't want another status quo, go along to get along Republican to go into Washington. It's much too late. We need to send somebody. I've got the experience to change things on day one and dismantle Marxist socialist policies from the Biden administration. So send me, I can go there on day one and change it.
Right, Tyler, 1 minute.
I don't think it'll work this time. We have an incredibly diverse district. It is, right? Does have oil and gas. It does have agriculture. It has the suburbs. It has the industry down in Commerce City. It has all these different things, which means we have people of all different walks of life that are represented here in the 8th Congressional District. And that's amazing. It's amazing as well as seeing how people are receptive to the Republican point of views, that we do need to be fiscally conservative, that we do need to cut spending, that we do need to drive down inflation so that we are no longer putting those who don't necessarily have the means in a harder position than they are already at. What I've enjoyed the most is speaking with people and understanding that we are all hurting and we need to do more. And we have an opportunity here in this party to do just that for many more people. Thank you. No, that's 30 seconds. We have much more to do, and we can do a lot of things. And the policies that we want to drive in Congress are the kind of policies that are going to put us in a position that we need to be in to pull us out of this economic downturn. Thank you.
All right. We're going back to Jules as the first one. So this will be a 2-minute answer. Would you be in favor of reforming or enforcing current immigration laws, or a combination of the two? Please provide your rationale for your position on this issue. Please note that we will be asking a follow-up question to address the DACA and other illegal immigrants, so don't divert into that area. And we will give you 2 minutes for this answer.
Well, first and foremost, are you ready? Okay, first and foremost, we don't need any new laws. We just need to enforce the ones that we have. We can start with fixing the existing process to make it easier for people who want to come here. Some people wait decades, and it's expensive, and it's almost unattainable for them. And then, of course, finishing the wall, we need to protect our borders. And as I mentioned before, some of the most patriotic Americans I've ever met are people who came here for the American dream. They're hardworking, they're small business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they have families, and sometimes they risk their lives to come here. They're extremely disappointed in what they're seeing, but like I said, we need to make the existing process more efficient and more attainable. What's being ignored is the humanitarian crisis at our border. And actually, I had a chance to chat with a photojournalist who was embedded with the Border Patrol down there, and she showed me some of her images and told me some of her stories. And one that really just eats at my heart every single day is one of a girl who's 14 years old, leaning up against the existing wall, holding a newborn. Like I said, she's 14 years old, and she was trying to get to this country with her newborn. She'd been raped 25 times in trying to get here. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable that the left is ignoring this problem. And for some reason, I know this is a little off topic, but Ukraine is getting more attention than our own border, and I think that's disgusting because our government's number one job is to protect our citizens. And actively participating in human trafficking themselves. That's unacceptable in my opinion. Sorry, I'm waiting for the follow-up question.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
All right.
You don't have to take up the full time, it's just, we gotta wait for the buzzer.
Sure.
In the interest of preserving time, we're gonna ask that the audience please refrain from any reactions to comments or responses to questions. You can hoot and holler at the end all you want. All right, do you need the question repeated, Lori?
No.
Okay, let's set the time.
On immigration issues, you can't be a country if you don't have a border. And you can't have an open border and an open checkbook. So we do need to fix that. I was at the border twice, once during the Obama administration and once during the Trump administration. And I can tell you, we have a huge humanitarian crisis at the border. Building a wall will work. So if you have toured the border, you know there's a lot of open space down there, and you can't control who's running across necessarily, especially with the coyotes helping them across. But you can build that wall and then funnel that towards the main highways so you can better protect our country and protect our citizens. And we do need to stop human trafficking. I heard a terrible story of a boy who was exchanged across the border 4 times. The reason that was happening is 1, the mom got paid a certain amount of money, and 2, it got men across the border who can cross over safely and then leave and disappear. And then the boy was exchanged again. That needs to stop. And during the Trump administration, they took very, very good care of those folks. They were so grateful. They had clean diapers, they had clean clothes, they had food. They almost died, a lot of them. And our Border Patrol did as much as they could to help them be safe and to save their lives on a daily basis. And they were vilified by certain people in our country. That should never, ever happen again. So let's protect our country, let's honor our Border Patrol, and let's build a wall and enforce our own laws as a country.
Okay, Tyler, do you need the question repeated? Okay, 2 minutes? You guys can clap real quick if you want. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We must enforce the laws that we currently have. I think it's incredibly important because right now we aren't enforcing the laws that we currently have. And we can do that in a certain couple different ways, right? By giving our Border Patrol the opportunity to be able to enforce these laws. Because they're probably stretched just a touch thin, considering how large that border is and how open that border is. So it does come back down to we need to secure our sovereign border. And building a wall is only the first step. which will give our Border Patrol the opportunity to be able to enforce those laws that we currently have, and the opportunity to be able to go after the other criminals and clamp down on those things that are happening. But until we have a wall that is built and other security measures set in place, it's going to be incredibly difficult for the young men and women down there that are protecting our border every single day to do their job. There simply just isn't enough. But if we build a wall, that'll start putting us in a better position to be able to take care and manage that problem. Enforcing the laws of our border and enforcing that, and the immigration that's coming across, or illegal immigration that's coming across, is about securing our communities. It's just like securing our energy independence is important for us as a country. Securing the border is about securing our communities, by stopping the flow of criminals coming across the border, by stopping human trafficking that is occurring. So we need to enforce the laws we currently have. We need to build a wall. It's incredibly important to do so. And that's all. I'm going to yield back my time on.
Tyler has a real problem going past 1 minute. That's right, concise.
I never thought I'd see the day when politicians or wannabe politicians were gonna give up their time.
You said you wanted something different, right?
So people are looking for something. That's a great answer. All right, you ready?
Okay,
Jan.
Jan, you have 2 minutes.
So when we think about immigration, we have to think about how our country was founded. The American dream was built with immigrants. Everyone came here with a dream to create something new in this country. That doesn't mean we have to give up our dreams for other countries. That doesn't mean that we have to limit what we're trying to do, and it doesn't mean that we can't secure our borders. But we also know that it is bigger than just nobody can come in and nobody can leave. We have to make sure that there is a path. But immigration is one of those policies that nobody ever seems to be able to solve. It turns into political rhetoric that everyone uses to stir people up. And so wouldn't it be nice if we could actually get together and solve a problem for once? I was talking with a family in Commerce City not too long ago because one of the challenges we're seeing is a problem with fentanyl. And it is coming across the border as a problem with immigration because we haven't enforced the laws that we have on the books. And fentanyl in Colorado has increased 700% over the last year. 4 grams will kill you, and it's easy to get, and you don't even know that you're taking it. And it's extremely unfortunate that we are in this position today. But on a positive note, I have a very good friend who's been married to her husband for 10 years, and he is from Mexico. They have a beautiful 7-year-old daughter together, and he has been trying to become a citizen for the 10 years since they got married. And they struggle with that for 10 years. They have a lawyer that's been working with them to figure out how to do this. They don't have a lot of money. She's a hairdresser, one of my very good friends. And I listen to her story often about what she can do to help her husband because her daughter needs her father here. And he wants to be here legally, and he's doing everything the right way, and he's not being given the option. So the laws we have on the books are there for a reason, in order to help people that want to be here for the right reasons. Thank you.
Jules?
Oh,
you're gonna-
did she, I think she started. Did you start with this question? Yeah, that's what I thought, okay. Like I said, by 8 or 9, we'll get this figured out. So this is another 2-minute question, and it's, like we said, this is a follow-up. So, as a follow-up to the last question about immigration, do you support what is commonly called a pathway to citizenship for those who have DACA, which stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, aka Dreamers, status versus others who have entered the country illegally? Want me to repeat that?
No, I think I got it. Thank you.
So Jules first.
So we do have a path to
Oh, I'm
citizenship.
sorry, oh. Yeah, thank you. I got that as soon as I said, I was looking at Lori first. Lori, please. We'll give you some more time at the end since we started it.
So one of our founding principles in our country that in our Republican Party is equal treatment under law. So we have a path to citizenship currently. And the other thing I learned during the campaign when I knocked on doors in Adams County or in Weld County for independence, overwhelmingly for citizenship, and overwhelmingly, they want us to control our borders and be under the rule of law. That's increasingly happening, especially as we're seeing some of these drugs come over the borders. Our citizens are not safe. So my answer to that is, I'm gonna go with the will of the people. I'm gonna go with our principle, which is equal treatment under the law. And I think that we have that pathway currently. Actually helped some people get their citizenship when they've run into a serious snag. That's one thing that we could do. I think the system right now is fairly broken. I think that we can remove some of those barriers. When I've listened to some of these stories of how they've had to go back for one little thing they didn't fill out right on the form and they went to the bottom of the pile, that's bureaucracy, and we need to stop that. We need to make sure that it is a streamlined process for those who really want to be here and want to be Americans. Thank you.
Tyler, do you want to give a minute up already, or?
Maybe not on this one.
Okay. Again, this 2 minute, and while he's doing it, please provide your rationale for position on, and also talk about DACA versus illegal immigrants, if you can.
Go.
The reason why this question is posed is because we had a failure in leadership, and a failure in policy, and a failure to enforce our current laws. The reason why we're even having to begin to have this conversation is because the left didn't build a wall and have stopped it at every chance that they possibly can. So that being said though, immigration is good. I'm an immigrant to this country, and I serve my country. Many immigrants sign up, come to this country, raise their right hand and say, send me overseas to fight for freedom, because they understand how important it is that America, the freedom that we have, and to be able to fight for that. Immigration is good. We were founded upon this, right? So, and we have a pathway to citizenship. I went through that. And it is hard, it is long. I came here in '93 and became a citizen in 2010. It's a long process. It's a large bureaucracy. It's overcomplicated. But it doesn't mean it needs to be any less stringent. We need to make sure that the people we're allowing to come into our country are the right kind of people that are going to provide to our society, who are going to give back. Like every immigrant who has raised their hand and said, send me, let me put the patch on my shoulder and fight for our country and fight for our freedoms, just like our founding fathers did. That's an important aspect of our society, an important aspect of what it is to be an American. So immigration is a fantastic thing, and we have a pathway to it. It is long, but it's long for a reason, right? But there are things that we can do to change that, to make it so that it isn't something that you're constantly having to go back or dot the I just because something is a little bit out of place. It's the important things that we need to make sure that our people that we're allowing into this country are the right people, that are going to give back to our society, that are going to be active members of our society and our economy. I'm gonna fill up some additional stuff here. So again, back to your question about DACA, right? It's a hard one, it's complicated, and we're here because the left failed. I don't have an exact answer for you of what we should do, because it is very complicated, but we do need to listen to people. We need to take in consideration the different positions that are around to ensure that we don't leave those that we shouldn't be leaving behind. So raise your hand and go fight for our country, and go and serve. Do your part. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan?
So we do have to be very clear. The challenges that we see around immigration are based on the policies that we're seeing from Biden and from Obama before him. Biden is just following through on what Obama started. When we look at DACA in particular, this is about kids. When Obama and Biden put these policies in place that basically said, come to our country, we want everyone, and we don't care who you are, people lined up at the border. And what happens is they couldn't get across, or they paid people money to get across, or they snuck across, and they dragged their kids with them. And those are our DACA, our dreamers. Those kids had no choice. They were brought here because their parents wanted a better life for them, which is admirable, but they were not given a choice on whether or not to be here. So a path for DACA is a path for kids to live the American dream. And it's something that I think is very important that we look at as an overall immigration policy. Again, our country was built on immigrants. We are all immigrants. None of us were native here. And we're looking at an opportunity here to bring kids into America and give them a better life. They've grown up here, they're part of our community, and we need them. And so DACA is a very important part of that. this time as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we gotta let R2D2 work its way through the process here. 30 seconds, so. I will tell a joke. One of the spouses of the candidates asked a question of me earlier. Why do we drive on parkways and park on driveways? You guys can fight over who to blame with that one, right?
I think I know.
Why do you have a hot water heater in your house when you don't heat hot water?
What was that?
Why do you have a hot water heater in your house when you don't need to heat hot water?
There you go.
On to the next candidate.
Jules?
So just to piggyback on what Jan was saying, she's right when she says these people came, these kids came here against their, it wasn't their choice, okay? Well, how long have they been here? Most of them are probably now adults, I'm guessing. So this just goes back to what I was saying about making the process more efficient, more attainable, and easier for them to get. Maybe we also impose some kind of outreach program to get them engaged, to make sure that they're following through with what they want to do. They shouldn't just be allowed to be here illegally. And if they choose not to go through the process, then maybe they need to figure something else out. I think something that's lacking in our society these days, and it encompasses in many different things, but in this case, personal accountability. At some point, you're an adult, you need to do what's right. You need to take the steps to become a citizen, go through the process, but again, it needs to be more efficient and more attainable. Perhaps if we were able to do that, it would alleviate some of the illegal immigration that was coming here. People come here illegally because it's so difficult to become a citizen. Yes, I agree that we should vet them and go through the process. I mean, going to Canada, you can't even go to Canada if you have a DUI. Why is it so easy for people to come to America? So, thank you.
I want to add one point to that, because I think it's important to note. We do know that the DACA group came here through no fault of their own. However, we also know that it was a result of not enforcing immigration laws. So it's a hard question. I agree with Tyler on that. However, it's not practical to deport the DACA recipients. The question really is, how are you going to deal with them and bring them into the norm as far as being at least a resident in the country and not normalizing their status so that they're not running around worried about what's going to happen to them next.
And can I clarify? I wasn't saying deportation. If they're an adult, they should have a choice.
Right.
And I'll just add a little bit to that too. When I was on the Adams 12 school board, that was a big question we had. We have a lot of kids, they come to us, state law says they come through our doors, it doesn't matter their whether they're citizens or not, we have to educate them, right? And so a lot of these kids, they come very young and they grow up and they're completely Americanized. This culture from the countries that their parents came from is completely foreign to them. They would struggle to go back to those countries where their parents came from and be able to thrive because they are Americanized. They grew up in an American culture, and from cultural perspective, they are Americans. That's how they think of themselves. So it would be very difficult to send them back. Is another practical point that makes it very difficult because it'd be very difficult on them. It'd be rough. So thank you very much for your answers.
Okay, this next question relates to what we're all experiencing nowadays. Rising fuel prices are a concern for all of us. Higher prices at the pump affect low and middle income citizens the most. What is your view on what Congress can do to address this critical issue? And this will be a 1-minute answer. We start with Tyler.
I had the opportunity to speak to a CEO of an oil and gas company here in town. And when I asked him this question to see what he would say, all he said was this: get out of the way. We don't need more politicians going to Congress and creating more laws for the oil and gas industry. We need you to get out of the way. We need to allow the free market to decide the energy that we utilize in this country. I also believe that we need to roll back some of the policies we have against nuclear energy. It's been a very long time, and it's an untapped resource that we have that we can exploit to a further extent, safely, mind you. Additionally, when it comes to energy, we need to be a net exporter of it as well. Liquid natural gas is something that we can export out from this country. We have the opportunity to do so. And by doing that, we'll drive down energy poverty across the world. So by being energy independent, we're doing more than just helping ourselves. We're actually doing more for the entire world as well. So when it comes to what we need to do, we need to get out of the way. Thank you.
Jan, do you know anything about this topic?
Only a little bit. I might need more than a minute, but. And I get it, right? Just start talking, right?
R2D2 is evident all over here.
Just go ahead.
So I do have 23 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, and the last 15 years of my career has been right here in Colorado in Weld County. And I think it's time that we send an expert to Washington to let them know that the buzzwords that they use and the talking points they give are absolutely incorrect. Jen Psaki gave out a number of 9,000 permits that are open that oil and gas companies are not using. It doesn't matter how many permits you have if you can't build facilities on the property, if you can't build pipelines to move the product, and you can't get trucks to move the product to get it to market. So 9,000 permits means nothing. We have an opportunity, not only in Colorado, but across the country, to change the policies that Biden put in place. He stopped drilling on federal lands, but that also means that we can't build facilities on federal lands. So I work in North Dakota a lot right now with the company I'm with, and we have federal land and we have private land. And we have land that's right next to each other. When I build a federal well, I cannot mingle it with private oil. And so now I build a facility twice the size that it needs to be because I have to keep everything separate from the federal government. So when they talk about oil and gas companies should just open up and start drilling, policies that they've put in place have prevented that from happening. We don't drill just to produce, we drill to make money, but we also drill to have a positive cash flow like any other business. We want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. And let me tell you, Colorado is the best in the world at drilling for oil and gas. We have the best regulations in the world, we have the best people that work in the industry in the world, and we can show the rest of the world how to do this the right way. I'd rather buy my clean oil from Colorado than buy my dirty oil from Russia. Thank you.
Jules?
So I agree with what both of my opponents have said, and I've been learning a lot about the oil and gas industry. And actually, I went on a tour of Weld County yesterday and saw some drilling sites and some pump sites and the way that it's all processed and moved around, and oil and gas too. But obviously, it makes zero sense for us to use our reserves and then pay another country at a higher price to replenish them. That's a horrible idea. It makes me question the motives of our current administration. So you're gonna stop production here so we can just buy it from other countries, some of which who hate us. This reminds me of the crap that the last Biden, or that last Bush administration did. So what's really going on here? A lot of the permitting process is incredibly inefficient. So as a congressman, we can certainly make that more efficient. Obviously, I'm all about efficiency. But then also I talked to someone who's in Montana, and their biggest problem is staffing. They can't find people to run the rigs.
Thank you. Lori, go.
Okay, oil and gas. Well, first of all, that industry reacts just like every other industry about uncertainty. So restoring the Keystone pipeline project would be one thing. In Colorado, in our basin, in Weld County, produce most of the oil and gas in the state. It is one of the cleanest molecules that you can find. And that is a much better option than, again, buying oil from Russia and other countries that are much dirtier. That is very hypocritical. The other thing I've done is passed quite a few bills to help out the oil and gas industry, one of which was a property tax bill that they came to me and said, would you please pass this, because one of the options was close their doors forever and pay the property tax. I gave them another option, and that is to pay their property tax later without penalty or very little penalty. That also keeps some of our Main Street businesses open as well. And I also led the team to secure our 1041 powers for Weld County, so we can continue to do land use permitting, to continue companies in Weld County to drill. And I was a coordinator for the oil and gas department when we secured the MOU to make sure that our processes can overlap with the state to make sure that we can cut 2 years down to 6 months.
Thank you. Tyler, you already answered this one, right? Okay. Just checking.
We're getting there, we're up to number 8 now, this time we're supposed to be getting figured out, right? So this is a 1-minute response, please. Rising crime is the direct result of anti-law enforcement policies promoted by Democrat lawmakers, both at the state and federal levels. What would you propose or support at the federal level to address this issue?
Thank
Yeah.
you. So as the mayor, as I said earlier, I have the honor to work with our police department. We hired a new police chief last year. We've brought in new officers. We've increased our funding. And we've also done a retention program. Because we don't want officers just to come here for a job. We want them to come here and be part of the community and stay in the community. Last summer when we were having the riots in Denver, there was a bill that came out of the Capitol, Senate Bill 217. And it was basically to put into law all of the COVID release protocols for people that had gone to jail. And I took a stand against it. I wrote a letter against it, posted it on my Facebook page. As you all know, social media is a great way to have a good conversation, right? And I got a lot of pushback because people thought it was about helping the criminals, when in fact what we were doing is hurting the victims. But what I got on the side was phone calls from my officers, from my spouses of officers, telling me that they were so proud that I was willing to take a stand against that publicly. And that's the kind of experience that I will bring to Washington, because everything that happens globally and everything that happens nationally happens locally.
Thank you. Jules?
Yeah, so we have no choice but to be a law and order state and country. When our police officers have to carry their own liability insurance, I just don't see how anybody would be motivated to put themselves out there, chase someone who's stealing a car, get into situations where they may lose their job or their life based on the decisions they make in that instance. We know crime is soaring nationwide. In fact, Colorado is the #1 location for vehicle thefts, and we all know how fentanyl's going. Perpetrators are released with little to no bail, and they're right back on the street, sometimes even the same day. We saw that with the riots, with the George Floyd riots a couple years ago. The emphasis has somehow changed from protecting the offenders and not the victims. Defunding the police was never a good idea, and now we're seeing Democrats backpedaling on it. A lot of people call for police reform, so perhaps putting some funding into better training, mental health training, programs where our officers can be better equipped to handle situations. Thank you.
Hey, Lori, what say you?
I would say we can see the fruit in full flower of soft on crime policies here in our country and in Chicago. So if you can imagine, their murder rate was 797 murders last year. They have about 200 square miles. Adams County has about 1,000 square miles. That would be basically Thornton, Westminster, and possibly Thornton, Westminster, and Northglenn, having 797 murders in that same square area. That is outrageous. That is exactly where we are going with some of these soft on crime bills. One of the things I did in my first year, one of the first things I did was voted to increase the pay for our sheriff's department to make our county a Second Amendment sanctuary county. We need to appreciate our men and women in blue and back them up. And we also need to stop releasing people charged with violent crimes, period. And we need to build and operate more courtrooms to get people in and keep them in jail longer. So we need to make sure we're on tough on crime. I have sponsored tough on crime bills that I know this electorate is really going to appreciate.
Is it possible to pull the microphones a little bit closer to you people?
Try below you. A little bit. Or try replacing with the one on the end.
You can pull them out too, like we have.
Go, Tyler.
Great.
So, there's a certain number of things that the federal government can do when it comes to how we're treating crime across our country. And a lot of this is carried out by our counties, by our local cities and so forth, with their police departments. But first and foremost, the radical left rhetoric needs to stop. It hasn't done anything good for our country. We saw Portland on fire, we saw Seattle on fire, and many other cities struggling because of the radical left rhetoric that's inflaming the situations that are going on in our country. Additionally, we need to enforce laws. This is all very similar to what we were talking about earlier with the border. If we don't enforce what we already have, then what are we doing? We need to enforce the laws that we currently have. We also need to make sure the laws that we are passing aren't going to hurt the citizens. When you think about some of the policies that have been passed by some of the Democrats here in the state, taking drugs from a felony down to a misdemeanor, and be able to hold enough on them to kill 2,000 people, that's unacceptable. Unacceptable. Thank you.
You guys got wound up on that question, great. Hey, before we start the next question, I just want to give a shout out. We have Mike McIntosh here tonight. He's in For those who don't know, Mike was our sheriff 4 years ago. He's running to be our sheriff again, so please support him or the other candidate. I think there's the primary. That's right. You don't have to even worry about it. He's the only guy on the ballot in the primary. So fill it out. He's, remember, bring Mac back. That's what it is. So yeah, we appreciate him coming out and doing this, helping us with security, in case you guys get rowdy out there.
Doing great on time. So this next question is about education. And in light of the powerful teachers union's radical agenda to indoctrinate our children and implement curriculum in our public schools, I should say questionable curriculum, what is your view regarding the role the federal government should play in education policies, if any? Also, would you vote to eliminate or reform the Department of Education if you had the opportunity as a representative in Congress? And we'll start with...
Does anybody need this question a second time? It was a little bit long and detailed.
So we're starting with Jules, I think, this time.
Perfect, this is my favorite topic. As a parent, I have been labeled a domestic terrorist for being concerned about my children and speaking out at school board meetings. Now, with our teachers unions, they control way too much. I think they should be outlawed completely. That's just my personal opinion. But with all of this junk being taught in our classrooms, our children are confused, they're behind, they're failing, and this is the future of our country. One of my biggest fears is when this generation gets to be of voting age. Are they gonna vote for socialism, or are they gonna vote for capitalism? My guess is that they're being so indoctrinated, they don't know what the difference is. And when it comes to the Department of Education, I would like it to see it gone altogether. Like I said earlier, it would be awesome to be able to audit all of these departments and programs and wasteful spending, but the Department of Education has just not done anything positive for our children and our education throughout the country. Sorry, I lost my place. But as a member of Congress, we can't do things like cut funding to those states who push things like critical race theory and the sexual indoctrination. This is a direct result of things like Common Core, No Child Left Behind, removing gifted programs in the name of equity. But funding should not be tied to ideologies or theories. We need to push funding towards things that they want. I saw it directly with COVID when they're pushing the mask mandates. They're using the carrot and stick, right? We'll give you money if you impose all of these mask mandates. And everyone fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, well, most everyone. Especially here in Colorado, and especially in DPS where my kids go to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, we should get rid of the Department of Department of Education, return that control back to the states. We have a model that works here. We've got a local control state, and I have encouraged and helped people run for local school boards. If we can flip around some of these school boards, which we've seen across the country and has happened here in Colorado, we can get rid of this terrible curriculum and this critical race theory. Money should follow the child. Even for homeschoolers, tax credits need to go back to them. It can't be prohibitively expensive. I have run that legislation as well. Also, sunlight curriculum. In a way, COVID actually gave us a window into what our kids were being taught. And parents saw for the very first time and then said, no more of this. And started running and started making a difference and started waking up. I also fought against the radical sex ed bill that was pushed through in 2013. As I was reading the bill, I can see the Speaker of the House turning white, because they didn't want people to know what they were teaching these kids starting in kindergarten. I helped get the amendment to get K through 3rd out of the radical comprehensive sex ed education, and it does stand to this day.
One more time.
This is a 2-minute, or if you want more time.
Oh, gosh. Then I'll go ahead and put my time to the gentleman to my left.
And go ahead, sorry, go on.
Tell you what, you put it on my phone here.
Just tell a joke, Mom. We got 30 seconds left.
All right, I'll tell you.
Your husband only shared one of them with you.
His jokes aren't funny either.
Okay, so I've got a good joke you can all remember, and you can tell at the Thanksgiving table, okay? So there's really only 3 jokes about politicians, because the rest are all true.
Tyler? 2 minutes.
We all want a strong, small, limited government at the federal level. It's incredibly important. Why we continue to have more departments that are being set up day after day is absolutely unacceptable, and it's creating a bureaucracy that's absolutely inefficient. When you think about the Department of Education, what has it done for us? I can't think of anything. I know that many states have control over some of their curriculum, but not all, and how they test their students. But the one thing that COVID did bring to light for everybody was they found out what their kids were being taught, and it scared us. And that's important that that happened, and it needed to happen, because we need to make sure that we were doing things for our children and understand what we're being taught, and not allowing people to legislate radical theory into their education and having them be taught that under our parents' noses. That's not good for our neighbors, that's not good for our communities. So absolutely, but get rid of the Department of Education? I can definitely see that happening. Should we have reform in our own state systems? Absolutely. And even locally we need reform. That's why we're seeing parents stand up all across this state, all across this country, saying no more and going and running for their school boards. It's because they do not want their children to be radicalized by the few far left radicals that are trying to do so and indoctrinate our children. That's it. That's all I got. Thank you.
I'll add something to that. When public education was founded in this country, it was clearly meant to be local control. And we've gotten so far away from that we have this monstrosity called the Department of Education, which is just another bureaucracy that is useless in my opinion. And so yes, I think somebody needs to step up and start pushing that train and shoving it off the cliff.
Our parents should have the choice to make that decision, to make those decisions for their children. It's why we're seeing school choice is such an important thing in our society, is because we want to have control. We want to make sure our children are being taught the right things. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan, you're up.
Thank you. So as a parent of 2 teenagers, this topic hits home very easily for me. So I mentioned that I got involved in politics because of my kids. So when my son was starting 1st grade, he's one of those brilliant kids that has a learning disability that he uses to not have to actually do his work. And I needed a school that could actually help me help him. And the traditional public schools were not working for us. And so we found a charter school. And again, I mentioned I couldn't get involved in the day-to-day of the school because I was working full-time. And so I decided to run for the school board. Not only did I run, but I became the president of the board my 1st year. And I was looking for what could I do to rally the parents behind this school. It was a K-8 school. It was over on 130, just south of 136 in Colorado. And we all were wondering, what do we do for our kids when they get to high school? So together, we expanded the school from a K-8 to a K-12 and built a $52 million campus to go with it. And today it's the largest charter school in Colorado, and you are all sitting inside of it right now. And it's a beautiful space. And we worked really hard to get this. And we are so very proud of it. And I learned a lot being on that board. Not just how to work with other parents, because we all care about our kids, but how to work with the teachers, how to work with the administration, and how to work with the kids, because the kids have a voice too. And now as we look at what we can do from a federal level, I'm actually pretty excited. I had the opportunity to meet Betsy DeVos when she was the Secretary of Education. I went out to the White House to celebrate a young student in the city of Thornton who won the National Award of Art for the 100th anniversary for the women's right to vote. And I was chatting with her about what her ideas were. She was the only non-educator to be in the role, which I know a lot of people were upset about, but she's also the only one that supported school choice. And then I met her not too long ago and was talking with her again, and she's working on a Parents' Bill of Rights. We have a Bill of Rights for being on an airplane, but we don't have a Parents' Bill of Rights for education. And it's time we bring that choice back to the parents. Thank you.
Jules, you're up, right?
No, I already answered it,
You already did? Okay.
but I can expand.
All right, we'll do the next, we'll go to the final question, and then it looks like we'll have a little bit of time for a couple of questions from the audience. You can line up over there in front of that podium if you're gonna be interested in posing a question.
I mean, we'll say that the same 11th commandment from Reagan is in effect, and ask good, fair questions of everybody, no gotcha questions, okay, folks? Thank you. So last question, 1 minute. Entitlement and welfare programs represent a large part of our federal budget, which is unsustainable as currently funded. What would you recommend to reform those two items without hurting those who are truly in need of such assistance? And we start with Lori, I believe, this time.
Thank you very much. So I would start back with what worked. When Newt Gingrich and his Republican colleagues came up with the Contract for America, I had mentioned earlier, one of our problems with inflation is obviously we're printing too much money. We're suppressing, our GDP by not being energy independent. We are not encouraging folks. We're not tying anything to work or production. When we did that, we actually had a balanced budget for the first time in my lifetime. And that was because we had a Republican majority in the House. So people overwhelmingly across not only Colorado, but this nation, approve of this. And the dignity of work and the dignity of having a skill set or even learning a skill set, why are you receiving these benefits? This helps us all. So we need to go back to that kind of principle, and I think that would help not only the people who need it, but help them get the skill set to get in the job market and be self-reliant.
Tyler?
The point of programs like welfare are to give people a hand up, not a handout. But it's been abused and abused and abused over and over and over again by people who just want to use it to live off of. And that's not acceptable. And we shouldn't be allowing that. And it needs to be reformed heavily to make sure that people aren't abusing it. Do I mind necessarily giving a bit of a handout? Probably not. When somebody really truly needs it. But I do have a problem when people utilize that to live off of and don't contribute to our society, don't contribute to our economy. That's unacceptable. We need to help these people get back to work and find full-time employment. We don't just need to be giving them money. And I think it's very important to distinguish the difference between the two. Because right now, the way it's being abused is unacceptable. And you asked about what would you do to change. And I believe in Florida, they actually instituted drug testing to receive your welfare. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. Why would you be using an illicit drug that you have to buy on the black market and still be able to take the money from the government when you're spending it on something you shouldn't be spending it on to begin with? We need to look at reform, and it needs to be done.
So it's easy to take these really complex problems and put in a few talking points that politicians get really good at without actually doing anything. So I actually want to talk about what I have done in the city of Thornton. We understand, most of us understand, that the government cannot solve all problems, but we can be that conduit to help people get to a point where they need to be. So we created a community connections department in the city of Thornton. Their job is not to hand out money, it is not to give away things, it is to make connections for those in the community that need a little support, whether it's housing or food or paying utilities or rent. And it's finding ways to find nonprofits that will work with them or members of the community that want to donate their time to them. We also have a homeless outreach team that does the same thing. But the focus is connections, not handouts. And that has worked incredibly well in our city. And what I found is our nonprofits want to be more involved. One of them, Food for Hope, that I've been involved with for several years, puts packets of food together for Adams County students. And I've been extremely proud to support that because we're feeding kids. But it's getting people outside of the government to help us. Thank you.
Jules?
Well, I am not a fan of welfare, but I do understand that there are people out there who truly need it. Unfortunately, like a lot of government programs, it has been abused and taken advantage of. So many people use these benefits and there's no one to check up on them. And perhaps it would be more efficient for our government to run it more like they did with the PPP program, where you get a certain amount based on your needs. In the PPP, it was payroll-based. But at the end of the time, at the end of the term, you had to be able to prove what you spent your money on. A certain 75% of it was meant to be spent on payroll, and the other 25% was for bills. So perhaps we could implement a requirement like that. I like what Tyler had to say about drug testing. That should be a given. And Ronald Reagan himself said it, and I'll paraphrase, I just saw it today, the best assistance is a job. So perhaps some of these people that can get off welfare, it will force them to be resilient and do what's best for themselves and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We've come to the end of our questions. So now, is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask a question? Come down to the mic, please.
That's my truth. Yeah.
You may address the question to one candidate or to the panel.
Thank you very much. I want to thank our host for tonight and the candidates for being here. It's very informative. My name is John Goad, Weld County resident for 30 years and a delegate to CD8 and to the state. This is for anyone, I guess all of the candidates. One of the things we love about Weld County is not a lot of people tell us what to do or how to live. And so I think that's something that we all would agree on here. But something we're not hearing candidates speak about is that of a digital identity. ESG is something that we've heard of, that I think a lot of people may have heard here. Environmental, social, or governance score. That currently large companies, certain index funds, other investment funds are taking this designation on to appeal to would-be investors or people who want to do businesses with companies that they would align with those green type principles. I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't think that these very same designations could certainly be given to us at an individual level. And we're very concerned about that. So I'd like to hear what the candidates might have to say. Thank you.
Can you clarify just quickly? So the question is that specifically about ESG?
Well, as it relates to ultimately a digital identity for us, literally a scoring of how we shop, where we do business, the credit card we use, those types of things.
Social credit?
Social credit.
Yeah, social credit
Thank
score.
you.
So I believe we were up to Tyler being first this time, so.
So yeah,
Only 1 minute for these two, please.
1 minute? Okay, well, I'll skip the first part. So to get right to the social credit, no, absolutely not. I believe that's being implemented in China, which, if I'm last mistaken, was a communist country. That's the type of things that tyrannists or tyrants try to in place. So they can have a social score on you, so they can limit you from what you're doing and know who you are, and that's unacceptable. We want a small government. We want a limited government. We want you to have your freedoms. And to your point, in Weld County, you don't like being told what you should be doing. That should remain the same. It shouldn't change. A social credit score is absolutely ridiculous and should not be implemented. I would fight against anything that even remotely came close to that. We may disagree on some things, each of us individually, but we should not be creating a social credit score. Who's going to govern that? Right? That's absolutely, I can't even imagine something like that. So to answer your question, no, we shouldn't have it. We should fight against anything that comes up like that, because all that is an oversight, an overstep of our government, and we shouldn't be allowing that, because that sends us down a road that's very dark. We don't want to have that. Because I don't want to live in communist China. I don't think anybody here in this country wants to either, but that's a road down it if we take on something like that.
Jan?
So I don't know how many of you know, the SEC actually came out with a list of rules for companies to comply with related to ESG. And in order to be on the Security Exchange Commission, or in order to trade as a public company, you will have to meet these rules to going forward. I was sitting in a meeting this morning at Whiting, actually we have a lot of ESG goals. We actually did them before they were popular because it's just a good way of doing business, but now we're quantifying them so that the SEC will be okay with how we trade our stock on the stock market. It's an interesting conversation because one of my coworkers looked right at me and said, who's in charge of the SEC? Well, the federal government is the one helping with the SEC. So wouldn't it be great if we had an expert in Washington that could actually talk about ESG from what it actually means, instead of just passing on ideas that mean nothing, but make people feel good when they're trying to come up with ways of being better companies. Companies' jobs are to make money for their shareholders and to provide a product that people want. And the people that want to buy can choose where they go to shop for their business. Thank you.
Thank you. Jules?
This reminds me of that Black Mirror episode on Netflix. Have you guys seen that, where the girl, every time you have an interaction with somebody, they can rate you? And her life just went down the tubes and didn't get anything because she didn't say the right thing to the right person or anything like that. I agree with Tyler. I think it's an absolutely horrible idea. I think it's unconstitutional. And as Americans, we don't want to be told what to do, and leave us alone. So I think it's un-American and it's too much Big Brother, so I wholeheartedly disagree with having that, and I would definitely vote against anything having to do with anything like that. Thank you.
Since Jules was very concise, I'll throw something in here. There's a great book called Woke, Inc. by Vivek Ramaswamy. He talks a lot about a lot of this kind of stuff and how corporations became big into all these social causes. So if you want a good read on it, it's called Woke, Inc. by Vivek Ramaswamy. He's his family's from India, grew up in Ohio, went to Harvard, started a biotech firm, decided to write a book and get out of biotech so he help people learn just how bad that woke stuff is for corporations in America.
Lori?
Yes, so I think that ESG probably definitely can be tied to a digital identity. So I testified against, I believe it was SB 135, which, by the way, is part of the team that saved your gas-powered lawnmowers and leaf blowers. Yay. So we just got that. But also testified the fact that they're trying to make PARA, that's our state retirement system, their investments based on ESG. And they're one of the worst unfunded liabilities in the country. Obviously, they do not have a good crystal ball, and then putting that on top of that where they can't invest in fossil fuel companies is absolutely asinine. They obviously are not hitting their mark with the discount rate. So that would mean that more taxpayer bailouts from you if they enact an ESG rating. So it is a bad idea. If companies want to do it, that's great, but it just means rearranging the deck chairs because other people will then fill in to invest in those companies.
Okay. We're going to have time for the two questions there. We ask that you ask the question and not filibuster. And we'll go with Jan first on this one. Go ahead.
Just a quick question regarding social media. We've kind of touched on it a little bit here. What is the federal government's take and position and need for involvement, if any, regarding regulation of social media, as conservatives in particular have had their voices silenced many, many times?
I love this question, because social media has been one of those things that is the bane of a politician's existence, but it's also a format for us to get our message out. The federal government's role is a First Amendment role. We have the right to say what we want, but we don't have the right to be shielded from consequences for what we say. And so it is a balance between the two. This is something that, as a local elected official, I deal with quite a bit. My constituents live down the street from me and know where I live, and they can talk to me in person, but they choose to talk to me on social media because they don't want to say the things to my face that they say to me on social media. And as a politician, I have to just listen to it and take it. And my parents are in the audience, and I know my mom hates it because she wants to be out there answering those people, but she also knows it'll just make things worse. The government's role is really to stay out of it.
Waiting on our TD2 again. There we go. Hey, Jules?
So I hate social media so much. I wish I didn't have to have it, but as a small business owner and now a wannabe politician, I have to have it. We have to reach people. That's where they're at. Unfortunately, they are controlling the narrative. We've seen it with conservative ideas. They're censoring them at every turn with fact checkers. God knows who they are, right? But I think they should be held to the same standards as the news. You know, they somehow get to circumvent Section 230 and they're not held accountable. And that's stomping on our First Amendment rights. I think the government should step in and hold them to the same standards. Like I said, it's an unnecessary evil, but I think something definitely needs to be done about it, and they can't be left to their own devices to control the narrative. Thank you.
By the way, I'm in Facebook jail till Friday.
The last 5 years I've been on Facebook one time, and that was to sign up for my high school reunion this last summer. It was my 20th, if you can believe it.
Lord?
So we're in Facebook jail, sure hats off to you, messing up something right. So for these social media platforms, either allow all free speech and allow for liability for constraining such, or make them follow the same rules as a publisher with all the rules and regulations therein. That's the choice. And I think that would severely curtail some of these folks changing the narrative. But there are some good options as well with Gab and some other things where people can go on and they are not constraining free speech. So I'd also encourage folks to put your money where your mouth is, go to those other social media outlets that are not constraining speech.
Should have given only 30 or 45 seconds for this question. Hey, go ahead and go, Tyler.
One of the core issues here is that social media is trying to shut down the voice of people, Republicans especially. And they're trying to say it's because they're the ones that are held responsible for the words and the actions that are taken on their platforms. I recently met a gentleman and reviewed a bill that he would like to pass and signed and said that I will do it. It's called the Free to Speak Act. And what this is it says it is not the social media platform that would be held responsible, but you as the individual. Because we all have the freedom to say what's on our mind, to speak what is on our mind. And it shouldn't be them. And the reason for this is because we should be able to say whatever we want on social media. If someone's going to be heard about it, that is their issue that they need to deal with. Now, I'm not condoning bullying or anything of that nature. What I am getting at, though, is that just because you're a Republican, you say, hey, I believe in this, you shouldn't be quieted by the social media platforms. If anything, you should have your voice be heard. Isn't that the point? We all want to be heard. I want to listen to what you have to say. I want to understand why you feel that way, and if we disagree, let's talk about that. But if the social media platforms continue to go down this route, we'll never ever see that. And I look forward to pushing this type of legislation so that they can no longer use it as an excuse, and then the way we can make sure that they are held responsible for when they do censor people illegally.
Thank you. We'll now go to our final question, and then we'll roll into the closing statements. And just a quick point. Don't leave early because we have a fun item at the very end. Thank you.
My biggest concern is how you plan to deal with Kyle Clark or whoever it is at every local biased news station that's going to be beating you over the head on abortion, on climate change, and using questions that are biased from their agenda. And how prepared are you going to be to talk about anthropogenic climate change versus natural climate change? Get into depth about the issues that they always posit the question in a negative way, and that's what the person that's not here, the non-activist person, gets a ballot, and they vote based on what they see these media personalities do. Do you have a plan to challenge the moderators and how they pose those questions?
We're going to start with Jules and go across the board. So, go.
Oh, I'm so very much looking forward to that. But I think the biggest way that we can hold strong is just stick to the facts and not let them bamboozle us or lead us into a situation where we're going to get caught with our pants down, so to speak. So that's my answer, stick to the facts. Thank you.
Lori?
I guess it depends on the topic, and of course, media is certainly, I would say we'd all agree, is pretty biased towards one philosophy. And a lot of that philosophy just doesn't seem to comport with reality anymore. So I think also we've got a lot of opportunity, even though we talk about social media and the unfairness of it, we have more opportunities than ever before to get our message out through multiple platforms, which is amazing. So we should take back our voice and be on board of those platforms regardless, and circumvent the fake news media. But I would just say, let's keep on the truth. Let's not back down even for a second. And let's tell the truth again about our founding principles, our country, and also shifting towards how are certain policies either hurting people or helping people. And again, our drug situation is one of those where our sheriff's department is in danger every day because the vapors from some substance can kill them. Oh, is that a big
We've got to give it up on our TV.
All right, so our AMTs and our sheriff's departments are in great danger right now. We should be talking about that rather than people who have chosen to do a certain crime and to be more lenient on them.
No stranger to fire, right? And words are just words. And we all grew up with the old adage of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And the woke culture today is trying to use words to hurt all of us. And they're going to try to come at us with whatever rhetoric or whatever stance they want to have. But we must maintain and stick true to the facts, because that's the one thing that does not lie. Facts do not lie, and they cannot combat that. So regardless of what the question is, regardless of what the topic is, it's sticking to the facts. It's understanding that you want to pursue a green energy. I get it. But it's going to be around the year 2600 by the time they can actually take care of and do what the oil and gas industry does today. But they don't want to hear about that. Those are the facts that we need to push against. Those are the types of things that we need to make sure they understand that when they try to catch us off kilter, that's okay. That's what they're there to do, and that's what they're trying to do. It's not falling a fool to that. Making sure that what's coming out of all of our mouths is the same thing, the facts. As long as we stick to the facts, we will overcome. Thank you.
Good person. Jan, you're last, but not least.
So the media is always a fun one. What I've learned in my years on the school board, my years on the city council, and now my years as the mayor, it doesn't matter what I say because they're going to show the story they want to show anyway. In my years in oil and gas, we always thought the problem was that people weren't educated about oil and gas. If only we could teach them. Engineers, I want to teach, I want people to learn, I want them to understand, but it can't overcome emotion. And so being able to talk and listen is the most important thing. I can't walk up to you and explain to you that fracking is safe if you believe it's going to hurt you. But what I can do is address your concerns. I can talk to you about it. I can listen to what's actually happening. In fact, I did that in the city of Thornton. I helped rewrite the regulations in the city of Thornton based on the actual issues that people were having. And I've used that throughout my entire professional career and my political career. is just listening to people and talking to people. Because the media is going to say what they're going to say, and we can't change that, especially Kyle Clark. But we can talk and listen to people.
Beep.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're gonna go into our closing statements. So go ahead and announce that part.
So, like we mentioned earlier, we're going to go in reverse order of the opening statement. So, Jan, take a quick sip of water and then be ready to go with your closing remarks. And we'll go with 1 minute.
Thank you. So what a great evening. Thank you all again for joining us this evening. And you've heard me say it before, we need more outsiders in Congress. We need people that live and work in our communities and who serve in our communities. Because if we keep putting insiders and career politicians to Washington, we can just expect more of the same. I'm a full-time working mom who consistently beats Democrats in their turf. As an engineer, when I see a challenge, I find a solution. I helped expand a charter school, this one right here, to give parents more choice for their kids. As the mayor, I increased funding for my police department, and I stood with our small businesses when COVID restrictions went too far. I'm proud to work in the oil and gas industry, and I'm a wife and a mom of 2 teenagers. We must send an outsider focused on results to Congress. And I'll focus on the issues that impact our lives: cost of living, education, and safety. And I'll fight and win for us. And I'd be honored to represent you and to represent this community that I love, and I'm asking for your vote. You can follow me at janforcolorado.com.
We'll see if Minuteman can nail it again here. So.
The greatest honor of my life was serving my country. It was standing alongside my brothers and fighting on the front lines of Syria. That was the greatest honor of my life. Because it was me, and not my friends back home or anyone else. It was sent me, allowed me to go and do this. One of the greatest things that I ever did and ever watched happen was when we liberated a city in northwest Syria, the first city liberated from ISIS, and watching the people flood across that town because they were finally free from the tyranny of ISIS. Serving my country means everything to me. Achieving the American dream and helping others achieve that means everything to me. And it's personal. Coming to this country, going to war, I want to make sure that we have a world that we can live in where that's the case. But with the radical policies of Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and the far left, that's being stripped away from us. And I cannot stand by and allow that to happen. And I look forward to going to Congress and representing and being the voice of the people of the 8th Congressional District and doing my job by representing you the very best way I can. My name is Tyler Alcorn, and it's time for the 8th District to send in the Green Beret. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori?
Gas prices, food prices, inflation, war, all caused by socialist democratic policies, failed green energy schemes, attacks on American oil and gas, COVID lockdowns, which destroyed the labor market, and Biden's debacle in Afghanistan absolutely emboldened Putin. These failed socialist policies affect every single person in this new district, and we're all dealing with the consequences right now. I say Republicans maybe need to stop worrying about the next election and start worrying about our freedom. Let's fight for freedom. Elections will take care of ourselves. Even our Lord said, today has enough trouble of its own. We need to not only talk about principles, we need to actually act on them. Because otherwise, our party is built on the sands, blown away by the next storm. When we walk the walk, our party is built on a solid foundation and will withstand the next storm. Thank you for the extra forum tonight and for everybody attending. You are the hero of the story. And as elected officials, we are supposed to be here to serve and represent you. Thank you.
And Jules, take us home.
Well, we need a strong conservative who people can connect with and be able to relate to in Congress, representing the CD8. Republican voters have left the party because they're tired of out-of-touch career politicians. We need business-minded people in Congress because our federal government needs a full audit. It is inefficient, wasteful, and spends more than it brings in. They tax the American people to pay for their pet projects and programs and aid that have absolutely nothing to do with America. It also seems as though there is nothing we can do about it. And it's been going on for decades. I say enough. It's time to get rid of government overreach, overspending, and wasteful programs, and we must demand accountability. I believe in family, freedom, and accountability. It's time for a change because we, the people, deserve better. I'm Jules Gray, and I'm a constitutional conservative, America First candidate. If you're a delegate, I would love to have your vote Saturday morning in Assembly, and you can learn more about me on my website at julesforcolorado.com. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank everybody here, and also, unfortunately, Barb Kirkmeyer could not make it, as she was detained down at the State House and having to vote on something. So I encourage you guys to go look at her information. She has a website. Sure, I don't know what its name is, but okay, there you go. Thank you. So also encourage you guys to look into her also, please, even though she wasn't here to talk to you folks. So I want to thank Jules Gray, Lori Sane, Tyler Alcorn, and Jen Coleman. If we give them one more big round of applause, please. Also, I know some of you might have come here already knowing if, okay, first of all, if you're a delegate to CD8, please raise your hand. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So out of those who came, if you weren't already sure who you were going to vote for, or if you've come and had your mind changed, don't tell us who, but if that has happened to you, could you please raise your hand again? You guys moved some folks. Good job, guys. Good job.
Is it, okay, yeah, you asked two questions. Is it they knew who they wanted to?
If you've had your mind changed, or if you've made up your mind based on this discussion today. So thank you for the clarifying question. So either one, if you have shifted or if you've made a decision tonight, raise your hand. Okay, good, good. I'm glad to see folks coming here with an open mind and being listening. I know some of you might be.
And we're going to turn over.
Already did it since you're married to me.
I'm going to turn over the mic to our Sergeant at Arms for a important announcement.
All right, thanks for all of you guys coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks for the candidates. It's really hard to put yourself out there, especially as a Republican, because you get attacked at every corner, even by other Republicans. So I want to thank you guys very much for coming out here. People have been asking me if we're going to do a straw poll tonight, so we have a little bit of a different way of doing the thing around here. We're going to do a straw toll. If you think your candidate won, you can put $1 into their bucket. Everyone has a bucket on the top. And as per the 2020 election with the Democrats, if you want to put in $5, you get 5 votes. If you want to put in $100, you get 100 votes. As many as you want. The money will go to the Colorado Hispanic Republicans, not to the candidates, so that we can keep doing this kind of thing.
And the forum.
Yeah. And I will take credit cards. So thank you very much for coming out, and please make your deposit right at the end.
Thank you for coming tonight. This concludes our forum, and we hope that we've provided some good information for you. One quick point, for those of you going to state, the Colorado Hispanic Republicans will have a food cart outside the arena if you don't want to pay the high prices inside. Thank you.